Some would say that it's a discouraging time to build your own PC. And that makes sense when $2,000 will get you a gaming GPU or a single kit of DDR5 memory. But if we shop smart, we can still buy a pretty rockin' full PC for that price and assemble it ourselves. So Seasonic sponsored this video to help us show you that it's not all doom and gloom. I said not all doom and gloom! Thank you! Kinda need all the help I can get to find the bright side here, because looking at the direction pricing's been going for the past few months, it's hard to be sure that this stuff isn't gonna be even more expensive by the time you watch this video. I said not all doom and gloom! Are you tired of boring screwdrivers? Boom! 4 new colors of the brand new LTT transparent screwdriver. Plasma purple, cryo teal, molten orange, and carbon black. They're see-through, they're awesome, and they're probably gonna sell out. Because for a limited time only, if you buy through YouTube Shopping at the link in the video description, you will get 20% off your driver, but only until December 30th. Collect them all, or maybe pair them with our brand new bid case and all over print hoodie. Starting at the beginning, a great way to save $1 is to buy a last generation CPU. In this case, the tried and true AMD Ryzen 7 7800X3D. Furthermore, by opting for an OEM CPU, which didn't actually come with a box, we saved another $10, making this chip almost $100 cheaper than buying the newer 9800X3D. And the best part is that according to our lab's testing, in the real world, gaming at 1440p or 4K, we're really not giving up that much, if anything, compared to the latest and greatest. There is one downside to going with OEM though. Your warranty will not be through AMD directly, so make sure that you check the terms and choose a reputable seller. Now to find a reputable motherboard to keep this little guy cozy in. We felt that Gigabyte's B850 Gaming X Wi-Fi ATX was a great choice. We got it on sale for $150, which is a fine price for a full-sized ATX board that comes packed with features like high-speed onboard networking, 3 M.2 slots, one of which running at Gen 5 speeds, and solid I/O with both HDMI and DisplayPort for your integrated graphics solution, if you ever need to use that. Now, before we mash these boys together, it's probably time to prepare our work surface. I strongly recommend an ESD safe mat and an ESD strap, and I enjoy using my motherboard box as a handy little work platform. For tools, you don't really need much to build a PC. A screwdriver should be all that you need, but your life will be a little easier with a magnetic parts tray, zip ties, some side cutters, and then occasionally my needle nose pliers will pull me out of a sticky situation. With everything laid out, installing your CPU should take no more than about 30 seconds. Open up the CPU socket, line up the old golden triangle or the notches on the side of the CPU, and then place it gently into the LGA socket. Once you think it's in there, give it just a tiny little wiggle to make sure it's seated properly. Now we lower the hold down, followed by the lever. Now I've said this before, and I'm gonna say it again. This takes more force than you might expect. Don't worry about that. Toss this into your motherboard box for safekeeping, and instead, worry about all the amazing memories that our new little friend here is gonna make in his new home. And worry about how expensive memories are. Memory prices have gone through the roof in recent months. Against that backdrop, our $300 2x16 gig kit from G.Skill seems downright reasonable. I mean, at least it's 6,000 megatransfer per second, CL30, which is a great sweet spot for AMD, and I mean, hey, we didn't want fancy heat spreaders or RGB anyway, right? Right. Hopefully, by the time this video comes out, you'll still be able to find a kit like this for around this price. And if you can't, well, hey, here's a convenient dartboard design that you can download, print, and enjoy instead of playing video games. Anyway, if you manage to get your hands on some memory, just go ahead and pop them into slots A2 and B2 by opening up the latches, lining up the central key, and pressing firmly on both sides of each DIMM until you hear a distinct click. By the way, if you have just about any weird issues when you first try to fire up your system later, an easy troubleshooting step that works way more often than it should is to take your memory out and reseat it.
And then reseat the RAM.
There. Now our 7800X3D is cozy and no longer suffering from short-term memory loss. But long-term. Well, that's a whole other story. That is where our 2TB PCIe Gen 4 NVMe storage drive comes in. This gives us plenty of space for both our operating system and whatever games or files we want quick access to. It also features a DRAM cache to help aid with both performance and longevity. What drive did we order, you ask? Well, the one we ordered and paid $150 for was a Gigabyte Aorus 7300. But the Amazon seller shipped us a Samsung 990 Pro, so thanks for the unfraud. Let's get our armor removed from our motherboard, this handy toolless little latch right here. And now we're presented with 3 options for our slots, A, B, and C. We chose B. Why, you ask? Well, slot C is not connected directly to our CPU, which can occasionally lead to bottlenecks. And as for A, it runs at Gen 5 speeds. This is not a Gen 5 drive, so we might as well leave that free for potentially a future, faster drive that we want to install down the line. If you've ever put in an M.2 NVMe drive before, they all install basically the same way. Push the SSD into this slot here at a little bit of an angle, then secure it to the post on the other end. This used to be mostly done with tiny little screws that are lots of fun to lose, but many modern motherboards use newfangled toolless mechanisms like this one. Then just go ahead and remove any protective covering over the thermal pad that's on the bottom of your motherboard armor, slot it back into place, and Bob's your uncle. Hi, Uncle Bob. Now it's time to keep Mr. CPU cool with yet another recommendation for the only heatsink company that seems to matter right now, Thermalright. The Phantom Spirit 120 SE is a dual tower 7 heat pipe beast that includes 2 fans, quality thermal compound, and a robust mounting mechanism. How is this thing only $40? I'm not mad, I don't get it. Step the first, remove the stock mounting bracket from your motherboard. Step the second, grab the AM4 and also AM5 mounting brackets, red spacers, and associated screws. Step the third, do all of this stuff. It's worth noting, by the way, if you buy a different cooler, these steps may vary. The manual is your friend. Now it's time to apply some thermal paste. If you're not sure if you're using enough, there's an easy way to check. Just put your cooler on, tighten it down, usually until the screws bottom out, then take it back off. You'll be able to see if you've got good coverage of your CPU. At this point, it's fine to either top up or just leave it and put the cooler back on. With our hunk of metal strapped on, next we're gonna attach our fans with these spring clips. Make sure that your cables are coming out the side nearest to your motherboard power header. This is gonna make it a little bit easier to manage later. Our unit came with a PWM fan splitter, so we can plug both of our fans into one header. We're gonna go ahead and use that, and we're also gonna daisy chain together our RGB leads before plugging both of those into the motherboard, and then tucking all of the cables away under the heatsink. Make sure that they don't stick out into your fan blades though, then you're gonna have a pretty bad time. Next up, if a motherboard's a home, then a case is a community. This metaphor is spread thinner than thermal compound at this point. But anywho, doesn't matter. The point is, what better community for a Canuck like me than the Fractal North? With Fractal focused on promoting their new Epoch line, the North can sometimes be found on sale, and there's no shame in saving a few bucks on a last-gen beauty like this one. It comes in white or black with either a tempered glass or mesh side panel, and is delightfully easy to build in with modern features like rubber grommets around the cable cutouts, cable management channels and tie downs, and front USB-C. Let's remove the side panels by loosening the captive thumb screws and pulling the panels back and away. This gives us access to the case accessories box that Fractal cleverly stores in one of the 3.5-inch hard drive sleds. The first thing that we're gonna need from here is 8 of these more coarsely threaded 632 mounting screws for our motherboard. We're gonna pop the top mesh off to make our wiring job a little bit easier later. Then we're gonna lay our case down flat with the pre-installed ATX standoffs facing up. Next, grab your motherboard either by the cooler or the edges of the PCB and ease it gently onto the standoffs. I like to go in at a bit of an angle like this, lining up the I/O shield first. Whatever you do, make sure never to scratch or scrape the back of the board against the standoffs. That is one of the most common ways that people can damage their hardware. With your screwdriver, perhaps a colored transparent one from LTTstore.com. Tighten down the 8 screws that we grabbed earlier. With our motherboard in place, we can plug in our USB-C header here, our USB 3 Type A header here, our front audio here, and the rest of our front panel headers down here. If you think you're gonna hook up any SATA SSDs or hard drives in the future, this is a great time to run any SATA data cables that you might need for them. Just plug them into your motherboard right here, and then run them either to those drive sleds where we got our accessories box, or to these 2.5-inch caddies on the back. Future you is gonna thank you. The last things we need to plug in are our case fans. Now, mostly doesn't matter what it says on the label next to the header. The speed curve and the temperature can usually be reconfigured in the UEFI BIOS. But to make life simpler, I usually try to use case or system headers for my case fans. These ones right here will do nicely. Nice looking build, hey? Time to add some juice to our community. We're committed at this point. Let's call it the power station. Seasonic's Focus GX V4 750 watt gold power supply is a great choice for this build. We've been partnering with Seasonic for almost as long as their 10-year transferable warranty. A warranty they can stand behind thanks in part to the fluid dynamic fan bearing in their fans, which are extremely reliable and generate less noise and heat than traditional ball bearings. That, combined with their patented hybrid silent fan control, means you can trust a Seasonic power supply to stay both cool and quiet. Also, thanks to our labs testing on power supply circuit, I can personally promise you this is a fantastic unit. Check them out at the link down below. We really can't recommend Seasonic enough. As for the capacity that we chose, the 750 watt unit stood out because, like so many of our choices today, it's more than enough for an efficient gaming CPU and a solid GPU, and also, we were on a budget, and it was on sale. Our case gives us a flexible mounting plate, so we can install this puppy whichever way we want. I'm gonna go with the fan intaking from the bottom, but if you have a high pile carpet that risks suffocating it that way, you may wanna flip it around. Attach the mounting plate to the power supply, then plug in all of the cables you're going to need. 2 8-pin EPS connectors, although technically one will do, 1 24-pin ATX power connector, a single 12-volt 2x6 connector for our GPU, and a string of SATA power connectors for the future. Bundle up all of those cables and pull them and your power supply through the back of the case like so. The SATA power, we're just gonna tuck underneath, but everything else can be pulled through our cable management channels and cutouts like so. The 24-pin is keyed, so there is no way to install it backwards. Oh, okay, it can be done, but please don't. Position it like so and press down firmly until it's seated. You should hear a subtle click as the little latch slips into place. Next up is our CPU power. These can go around the side and then up through these cutouts at the top. This can be a little bit tricky to do after the fact with big air coolers though, so a cool hack if you have a modular power supply is to install those earlier. But I forgot to do that. Shit, I did forget to do that. As I noted before, a single 8-pin here would be totally fine if we're not extreme overclocking. But the second 4-pin won't hurt anything, and the extra pins can just hang over the side. Finally, we're at the 12-volt 2x6, which we're gonna put here. Because first, we need our GPU. You can think of the GPU as kind of like the community's entertainment center. And we've gone with NVIDIA's RTX 5070 Ti, a 16 gig card that is, unfortunately, the best option at this price point. It wasn't an easy choice, to be honest. You might have noticed, this is the same GPU from our $1,600 build just a couple of months ago. But with the way that pricing has gone lately, particularly on memory, by the time we spec'd out the rest of a balanced system, we felt like leveling up to an RTX 5080 would result in compromises elsewhere that just weren't worth the trade-off. But what about AMD? Well, unfortunately, AMD kind of skipped doing an enthusiast tier GPU this generation. You could go back a gen and buy a 7900 XTX if you want the extra VRAM, but those are going for $800 or $900 at the time of writing. Performance is pretty similar to the 5070 Ti that we're using, and AMD just announced that their machine learning accelerated upscaling FSR4 Redstone will not be coming to the 7900 series. So if you like the latest technologies like ray tracing and upscaling, Team Green kind of has the market cornered at this price point. With our rationale out of the way, let's remove the appropriate PCIe slot covers, these two, then line up the gold teeth with the top PCIe by 16 slot. Once you think it's in place, give a firm little push. You might hear a click, or you might not. So do a quick visual inspection of the lock at the back of the slot and the bottom of the rear PCI bracket to make sure that everything is seated. Then screw it down. Our last step is to grab that power cable we left hanging and plug it into our graphics card like so. Time to fire it up. She booted, so finishing touch. I love the way Fractal does a light tinting on their glass. It looks so classy. You wanna start at 1440p or should we go right to 4K? We can game at 4K on this card. Why don't we do that? Oh, we have the new Anno. I haven't tried this yet. Ubisoft Connect. Curse you. All right, press any key to start the game. Oh, dude, upscaling off. Wow, it defaults to just like max everything. Cool. Now I heard these are AI and this looks f***ing terrible. This one looks okay. That last one looked like garbage. All right. Oh, sick. Oh, dude. Ruinous Dice Hall. Sanctuary of 71. Honestly, doesn't look that much better than 1800. Actually, maybe environment's a little richer. Yeah, ooh. Lighting a little better. We're getting anywhere from 30 to 40 FPS, which at 4K, absolutely cranked in this game. She's a bit of a heavy mama. Very comfortable with that. And more importantly, super reasonable noise level. That's what a giant dual tower cooler will do for you. Honestly, I think we could even turn the fans down a little bit. Our GPU is at 66 degrees and our CPU is at just 76. Whoa, whoa. F***ing diagonal roads? What is this black magic bullshit? Okay. Wait, what the f*** is this? 3 f***ing roads with 1 intersection? My brain is broken. Okay, I'm turning it off. I'm turning it off. They want me to try a different game. I don't know how to deal with this right now. Okay, let's play some Cyberpunk. I haven't looked at DLSS that closely in a while, and I gotta say, if you didn't tell me it was on, I probably wouldn't know it was on right now. With that said, quality is already rendering at a pretty decent resolution, and I'm only getting about 37 FPS, which is fine for me while I'm cruising around the city in my stolen cop car, but not ideal if I was gonna be in a firefight. So let's go ahead and tune our settings a little bit here. Let's turn off ray tracing and see what it looks like. And solved. Now we're above 50 FPS, which using variable refresh rate is a very playable frame rate for a non-competitive title. And I don't know, ray tracing's cool, but also like, man, what a nice little machine. Like, nice quick game launches. And like, yeah, $2,000 is a lot of money. But like, this is a sick computer. I'll be the meat shield for my helper guy here. Okay, there's smoke. Smoke is good, right? Oh dude, no, I recognize this map. This is an old map, right? What map is this? Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Oh, hey, I helped. I helped. Hey, I gave 170 damage, and I'm getting 250 FPS at 4K, probably completely maxed out. What a great gaming rig. As I mentioned in the intro, yeah, the PC industry is in a pretty rough spot right now. But as you can see, if you build your own system, you can still get a lot of computer for this budget. And if you're spending your money wisely, you'll be gaming at high settings for many Steam summer sales to come. If you've made it this far and you're not sure if building a system is right for you, we did happen to find a similarly spec'd pre-built over on Newegg for about the same price. You might miss out on some creature comforts, like a really nice case like this one, and a DRAM cache on the SSD, but that's also a perfectly cromulent choice. Thanks again to Seasonic for sponsoring this video. We're gonna have a link to their power supplies, as well as all the parts that we used today, down in the video description. If you guys enjoyed this video, why not check out the last first-person view build guide we did. The parts are a little different, it's a little older, but it's a great way to familiarize yourself with the steps from the same perspective that you'll have when you're actually building. Oh, I'm gaming, I forgot. See you later.